Okay, so could you please state your name and today's date for the
Uh, the day I think is the 3rd of February. My name is David Dansby, David M. Dansby Jr.
Hold on 1 second, Mr. Dansby.
Mm-mm,
We had a problem.
mm-mm.
You done fault. It fell off. You uncross your legs for me real quick,
Okay,
please?
okay.
Now you can cross them back.
Okay, yeah, just let them stay there for a while.
There you go. That should be good. You can, if that's more comfortable for you, you cross them
Okay,
back.
fine. Well, I'll try it this way for a while.
Okay. Can you hear things though? Can you say something for me?
Uh, my name is David Dansby. Today is February 3rd, 2020.
Good. We're good. Okay. So can you tell me where are you from and some experiences from the city you grew up in or were born in?
I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. Went to Jacksonville Elementary School, J.C. Price Junior High, and Dudley Senior High School.
Okay. Do you have any like images or kind of specific memories from your high school experience or growing up in Greensboro? What were things like?
Okay. Greensboro was a typical southern town, and we had a real good football team. And I do have some fond memories of our football team. And I have some disappointments because one of the best football players in the country did not get a chance to go to college or go to pro because we had a backwards principal. He had a speech impediment, and they didn't let him graduate on time. That was black people doing things to black folks. That was the kind of. But we did have some positive influences. We had some people that got us interested in civil rights.
And, oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah.
Okay. What were those race relations like growing up?
Well, typical. There were things that black folks couldn't do. I remember we used to go to Granville County about once a month, and we'd go through Burlington, and we would see they had a city park, they had a carousel, and we'd always want to stop and go, but my parents would tell me, you can't go because black people can't go. That kind of thing.
And what moments kind of shaped you as a child? Or what moments do you remember kind of inspired you with civil rights?
Well, I don't think I had any inspiration in much. When I got to high school, a professor came to Bennett named Dr. Edwin Edmonds. He had two daughters, and they came to Dudley, and since he was president of the local chapter in the NAACP, or became it shortly after he came here, they used to invite us over to his house on Sunday after church, and he would talk to us about civil rights and things of that nature. And we had two projects that we were concerned about. One was trying to get a chance to use the public library. I don't think we had much success at that, but we did attempt it. That was our first civil rights project. The next thing he got us sensitized about was the sitting in the balcony at theaters. And after dealing with Dr. Edmonds, I didn't go to a movie until, not one with a balcony, until after I finished law school, and because the ones at Chapel Hill were not open when I was there. We tried to get them open, but we couldn't get them open. But anyway, I got my entry involved into civil rights and decided I wanted to go to a state university. All of that was because of Dr. Edwin Edmonds.
And did you experience any discrimination because of your race growing up or in school?
Not in school, but you know, only thing we just had to ride the bus. We were bused by white schools, and I grew up in the UNCG area. That's a little place where black folks lived over there, and these our ancestors were employees. They did the manual labor at the college, and so I guess they just had a little neighborhood for them. That's where I grew up, you know. And I didn't have any problem with the people. I just knew where I could go and where I couldn't go. There was one time I was coming back from the movie. Some white boys in a car did jump out and assaulted me. They hit me so hard and so frequently I could see stars. And I'm so glad that I couldn't find him because my daddy would have been in jail.
What was that feeling? Like, how did you feel after that?
Well, you're angry, you're disappointed, but nobody was happy about Jim Crow. We knew what was at stake, and we knew that we were just as good as anybody else, and that we didn't deserve being treated that way.
Do you have any questions? Yeah, you're good.
With your experience here, being a Greensboro local, are there any people that you would like to talk about from Greensboro that you know of that either influenced you or influenced the civil rights movement?
Well, have you ever heard of Constance Baker Motley? Have you ever heard of her? Well, when I started practicing law, it was two guys that had a law from both of them were Carolina graduates. Kenneth Lee and his older brother, Alvis Lee, who went back to law school later. As a matter of fact, Alvis's daughter is Myrna Lee. She was married to Morgan Freeman. But anyway, later on, we had got another law partner. His name was Herman Taylor. Herman went to Columbia University back in the 40s. And there were two other black students there Herman's senior year. Herman was a senior, had 3 jobs, a wife and 3 children. One of his jobs was to be the research assistant for Thurgood Marshall. And when Herman graduated, he was planning to come down to North Carolina, open a law office, and teach evidence at North Carolina Central University, which had a relatively new law school. And the person he recommended for his job was a lady named Constance Baker Motley. Constance Baker Motley went on to be the lead attorney in the James Meredith case, the lead attorney in the Arthur Reed Lucy case. Herman used to tell us he was number 2 behind Thurgood Marshall. And it didn't register me until somebody gave me a copy of a book, a biography of Constance Baker Motley. You know, she retired as a district court judge. Anyway, and she referred to Herman as referring her to the NAACP for that job that she kept until she went on to the bench. Now, Kenneth Lee was one of the first one. He was the lead lawyer in the firm. He was the one that was a member of the first suit that brought an action in, I think it's around 51, to desegregate the University of North Carolina graduate school. And he was in the first class of blacks that graduated from law school to get any kind of degree from UNC Chapel Hill. So I did have some people around me who had some kind of experience. And then, of course, I was in high school with Jabril Kazan, Ezel Blair, and David Richmond. We were all in high school together. Franklin McCain came to Dudley after I left. I think he was there for 1 year. But I knew David and Ezel pretty well. I stay in touch with Ezel now. I call him Jabril Gazan. I guess that's his new name.
Now, with that connection to the Greensboro 4, you want to tell everyone where your office is located right now.
At one time, my office is located right across from North Carolina, right across from the McNair building. At one time, my office was located in the second or third floor of a building right across from where the Civil Rights Museum is now.
Do you think it's important to stay connected to the past here in Greensboro in the predominantly black neighborhoods?
Some of the past, but you know, a lot of people have different views about where black folks need to go. I'm more of a Garveyite. I think of the times when you could walk up Market Street and down other streets and you would see a lot of black businesses. Now you don't see that because we had something called urban renewal or redevelopment. We call that, some people call that Negro removal. And what happened? Black folks had to go out of businesses, and if they were able to relocate into newer areas, the rent went up substantially, and a lot of them were not able to stay in business because of the increased amount of overhead. And we don't put enough emphasis on that. They call Greensboro Tournament City because we do try to get a lot of events here. They got the belt track over at A&T. They draw a lot of people. The Coliseum draws a lot of people. We got the aquarium that draws a lot of people, but that brings money in here. But I don't think much of it gets to this side of town, and that bothers me. I think that was one of the problems that we left undone when Martin Luther King died. Now, what Ozzie Davis says, he has a book of speeches. He said one thing about it when the leader died, he was talking about Dr. King. We should have had a plan and said that when our leader died, we were on page 6 of the plan. What we should do is then go to plan 7, page 7. And that is what we have not done. Dr. King had a dream and Marcus Garvey had a vision. And Marcus Garvey's his biggest nemesis and advocate at the time was W.B. Du Bois. And shortly before Du Bois died, he said that he came to think that some of the things that Booker Washington said and some of the things that Marcus Garvey said make sense in terms of having your own separate economy.
With that, what do you think about the Revolution co-op that was recently built here in the past couple of years on 16th Street, or Phillips Avenue?
Phillips Avenue, yeah.
Yes,
Well, that was an effort, but my problem is what happened is this. Then the problem with our neighborhood over there is that some of these things need to be organized and created primarily by black people. There was an opportunity to have a store over there with a group of people led by Melvin Skip Olson, who is one of the founders of the Civil Rights Museum. But there was he suffered from the Jesse Jackson syndrome because white people give him bad press. Black folks did not want him to be involved in the development of a store. And it was just too much white leadership in it, and that's why it did not work. We needed more black involvement in the leadership and planning. And they were not able to be competitive, and I was a member of the co-op, but it just did not work. It might not have been the right thing at the right time. But I tell you what I did do that I'm proud of. I was instrumental in getting a library put over there. They used to have these little community meetings about what community wanted, and people would want basketball courts and things of that nature. And I decided that what we needed to do, instead of developing their bodies, we would need to develop their minds. And I just remember as a youngster, I was not close to a black library, and I did not have encyclopedias and almanacs and things like that at home to do your research for your homework. And I thought it would be nice for people in a housing project to have something that was close. And so I wrote a little proposal to I've forgotten the mayor at that time, I think it was Carolyn Allen. And ultimately, they talked to the library people, and they put a little library in the Irwin School. The Irwin School, I think now, was destroyed by the hurricane that was over there on Bessemer Avenue. But the problem with that, it was too far from the people that needed to have a little small housing project over there. Two of them. One that was on Wendover, and we just got into the car and decided how far these places were from the library. It was just too far. And then they had to cross a 6-lane highway on Wendover Avenue to get to it. So ultimately they decided they were located over there in that particular shopping center on Phillips Avenue, and that's how it got there. And my other disappointment was I wanted it named after David Richmond and either Blair or Jabril Kazan. They wouldn't do that. They got two obscure authors. One name, what was his name? Some kind of McGirt, and then there was this other lady that that was the Horton man. The Horton man has something, some little theater program down at I think it's down in Alamance or Chatham County or something like that. That was really disappointing to me, but we never got anything named after Jabril Kazan and David Richmond until Michael King started a subdivision, and he named streets after the young men. And later on, Dr. Rennick had enough foresight to put a statues to all four of them on the campus over there.
You've talked about your experience with the library and trying to get that going.
Yeah.
And the movies and that experience there with the group of white men. Can you tell me more about being a black lawyer? How was it, or being a black law student, how was it attending an all-white school like Chapel Hill at that time?
Well, the law school, the roughest part was as an undergraduate. I was about 18 years when I came to Carolina. But there was a guy across the hall from me. He was there in his third year. His name was Ralph Frazier. Then another fellow, my roommate's name was John Brandon. When Ralph came, Ralph was 15 years old when he came to Chapel Hill. That was kind of tough experiences for him, and all of them left. When I came back my second year, they were gone. And they say the thing was, it was just, they had been leaders on campus and they were very popular, but then to be on the outside in a situation like that was not naturally a normal thing. And I did not know until I got out of school and we went back to some kind of reunion that Ralph was the same age that I am. It was an interesting thing, okay. As a matter of fact, I was at Chapel Hill when they started the sit-ins up in Greensboro. and felt real bad. I wanted to be a monk, and I didn't know how we could do it because we didn't have a black college in Chapel Hill. But somewhere along toward the end of February, I heard that the high school students were picketing down on Franklin Street at this place called Colonial Drugstore. The owner was a guy named John Carswell, I think. So I went down and asked the people if I could join their picket line. What they were doing, they would march down a certain distance and then they were kind of doing about face and march the other way. So what happened? I got in the back of the line. They gave me a placard, and I walked with them. And when they did the about face, I was in front. And there was somebody there from the Daily Tar Heel. They took my picture. The next morning, in the Daily Tar Heel, there was a headline: Negro student leads picket line. I was not a leader. I was very much a follower. And so maybe a day after that thing came in the paper, I got a phone call. And they say, David, I say, they tell me you're the leader. I say, who is this? They say, the boys. What boys? The boys that's going to get you if you don't stop being the leader. And they also started exploding cherry bombs right around my door. They put cherry bombs around the window of my dormitory and other things. They also was at the same time something was going on in South Africa when they had that Sharpeville massacre. They decided they would put that up there, and every time they said black or Negro, it was underlined. So I guess they wanted me to know that was going to happen to me too. They did a lot of stuff like that. Well, with one roommate I had, he was eventually a city councilman in Charlotte, a guy named Malachi Green. Malachi was a well-dressed, and sometimes he would wear three-piece suits and carry a briefcase to class. And that was just too much for those guys. So they one day he was coming into the dormitory, and somebody took a bucket of water and dropped it on him in his three-piece suit. Another time we had a situation, that was this guy who law school. He was really a big guy. And so somebody drew a picture of a black man and had emblazoned on the front of SN, and then of course his hair looked kind of like African-American hair. And they say, this is super nigga at the law school. We had a few things like that happened to us. And then I had a lot of people, because I was real outspoken about a lot of things on campus, the discrimination. And they sent me a few threats from time to time, but I didn't think much about them because I never thought that we had this campus code, and I didn't think anybody wanted to get kicked out of school for causing any disturbance, but they would just probably try to scare you a little bit, but that's about it, you know.
How did you get through those experiences?
Well, we had courage. We just were outspoken, and we knew we were doing what we should be doing, and we were, I guess we thought we were invincible. I must have thought I was John Lewis or somebody, but I didn't think anything was going to happen to me.
I have kind of a handful of questions for
Oh, go ahead.
So first, could you tell us, you already spoke about your parents briefly, but could you tell us what their specific roles for employment were, and then can you tell us where you and your sisters went to college?
My oldest sister went to Howard University. She and Diane Nash were roommates the first year. Diane was only at Howard 1 year. They roomed together that year. Then Diane transferred down to Fisk. I went to Chapel Hill. My next sister, this works with me now. She went to Howard. And my youngest sister went to Central. What I still don't understand is how in the time my mother worked as a maid for one of the neighbors, one of the people that lived right across from UNCG, right across from the music building over there. As a matter of fact, my great uncle that sent me to college helped build that ACOG building over there. But I don't know, my parents never said anything about what I wanted to go to school. My daddy was doing landscaping. He would grade yards and plant grass on the new home would be being built by Kirkman and Curry. And he never showed any kind of fear, never said anything about it, just told me I was going to have to work or something so he could pay my tuition. And my mother never said anything. They never said, do you think you should be going down there? You know they don't want you there. They never said it. That I still don't understand. When my daddy died my first year in college, I had a cousin who was about the same age as my dad, an older fella. He lived in Greensboro, South Carolina, and taught down there. He told me that I should withdraw from Chapel Hill and go to A&T. But at that time, I was not going to hear that. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just going to have you pause real quick.
Yes.
Because of the train until it passes. And then
Yes.
we'll pick right back
Yeah.
up. You can go ahead and start back.
Okay. Well, that was one thing. I appreciate them for not getting involved. And I remember one year I made the dean's list, and the lady my mother was working for had a niece, a grandchild over at UNC, and she was struggling. But I said, Mother, do you think Miss Pitcher saw that in the paper? She said, no, she saw it. I said, did she say anything? No, she didn't say one word.
With Greensboro being a typical rural southern town during this time period, what strides have you seen Greensboro make and African Americans as a whole within the South since those trying times?
I don't think Greensboro has made a whole lot of positive strides. They were making some strides when they had projects like Project Homestead here. Reverend Michael King, who's passed away, he organized a group that were building housing for low and marginal income people. And one of the things he was doing was giving black people an opportunity to be contractors and subcontractors and employees in building these buildings. That's what we needed, but what happened, people didn't like to see a black man making money, so there were some other people, white contractors, were trying to elbow their way in. And some of them got in there and destroyed the program. And one of the things he was doing before he died, he had something called the Goldsboro Stokes Center. And they were going to be teaching people, the young people, the trades. That same thing Booker Washington was talking about. And now you see that the Mexicans and the foreigners are pretty much taking over those trades. No black people in those trades, and there's no vertical mobility, and we don't have the place we need to have in the economy that we should have. We got some of the stuff backwards, and I think Du Bois got some of it wrong, and he'll tell you in his last speeches when he got last separated from the NAACP that he was wrong about some things, and the main thing he was wrong about was making sure that intervening so that Marcus Garvey could not go to Liberia. I know you know about that, but anyway, he was trying to build an industrial base for Liberia, and I'm sure that Africa has lost trillions of dollars because of the fact that Garvey couldn't go there. I think that we kind of got some things wrong in we don't have the black economic infrastructure. I think that my former law partner, Kenneth Lee, did open a bank called American Federal Savings and Loan Association, and Henry Friday later opened the Greensboro National Bank. That helped some, but I just don't know that that the way they're doing now, like marching on Jones Street, when you there's probably not one black that's selling a thimble full of gasoline in Greensboro. When you send those buses down to Jones Street to march, and what I'm thinking about is you're begging white folks, and I don't think that they're gonna respond, and I don't think that's the way to do it. And when they do that, I looked at Stephen Crane wrote this poem called "A Man Said to the Universe." Are you familiar with that? A man said to the universe, "Sir, I exist." And the universe said, "But that doesn't give me any sense of obligation." That's the way white folks feel.
Knowing, if you could say it for the viewers of this that
Yeah.
may not be aware, could you break down geographically the predominantly black neighborhoods in Greensboro, and then your views on gentrification and, you know, I want to use the term black flight, how people are getting pushed out of their neighborhoods. So I guess where are all of the predominantly black neighborhoods that really were the focal points for these communities, and what's happening to them now?
Well, I really think that the black neighborhoods have been fairly stable over the last 40 or 50 years. What has not been is the little black economic community. There's a street over here called Martin Luther King Boulevard. Back when, before that the name was changed, it was called Asbury Street. As a matter of fact, Albion Tourget lived on Asbury Street. And but anyway, I used to get in argument with Earl Jones all the time. He was on the city council at the time. I say, what you did is when the redevelopment commission went in, all of the black stores closed, and all of the white stores stayed open. And one was owned by our former mayor, Jim Melvin. And they say that the reason they were closing the black stores was they sold wine. As soon as the black stores were closed, Jim Melvin's the convenience store connected with that little service station started selling beer and wine. That's the main thing. The neighborhoods are have remained pretty steady. It's just that the business strips that were populated by black men, the business are closed. There was one little strip over there by Bennett College. All of the black businesses closed. Didn't make sense that some of those businesses were convenient to black businesses, to black consumers.
With you being located right across from NCA&T, what are your feelings, joys, regrets about how far the university has come and what they're continuing to do going forward?
The university is moving forward in leaps and bounds. I'm proud of A&T, and I wish that I had been associated more closely with A&T. My sister taught there briefly, okay. But the reason I didn't get a chance to go to A&T is because I had another mission. And there were some things I wanted to do that I couldn't do because what happened when I told you when I got to Chapel Hill, there were some guys, the first original people that came to Chapel Hill, Ralph and Leroy Frazier and John Brandon. Well, anyway, when I went back my third year, they were gone. And the Durham newspaper had some very nice and unflattering things to say about them. I think one guy had come out of law school too, that they and went back to Central. They had some unflattering things to say about him. And so that meant I had a mission to try to finish. When other people were going on the Freedom Rides, I couldn't go on the Freedom Ride. I had to go to school and had to accomplish that mission. It was very interesting. One time we were there, we were concentrating on trying to desegregate the campus and things that the government controlled. And when you went to the hospital over there, there was a teaching hospital, and they had a black and white, maybe colored and white, water fountains and colored and white restrooms and colored and white waiting rooms. And we didn't think that was right, so I had a roommate named Lester Carson who was a transfer from North Carolina Central. He had just spent a little time in the Navy and came back to get his journalism degree. And we decided that we didn't think that was right, so we were going to do something about it. And we heard that Governor Sanford was coming to dedicate the School of Public Health. And so we decided we would pick it so we can get some publicity when the media was going to be there to cover Governor Sanford. And so we did pick it, and everybody was every black person on the council told us they were required to be there, except we said Julius Chambers was editor of the Law Review. He was top of his class. He could study. He didn't need to come. And Mel Watt, who was a later congressman, Mel Watt was Phi Eta Sigma or Phi Beta Kappa, and we said he could study, but everybody else should be there. Everybody didn't come, but most of them did. But you know, the next morning, we went over and all of those signs were gone, but they never desegregated the wards and stuff like that. We left that to one of my other classmates, a guy named Thal Elliott. Thal was didn't care about civil rights, okay, until he was chosen to be Gertigan Scholar. You ever heard of the YWCA on campus and Ann Queen? Ann Queen tried to make sure that blacks got an international experience. And so she got Thal selected as the Gertigan Scholar. So he spent a year in Germany and went over there and found out that discrimination against other people was wrong. So when he came back, I think he took up the mountain and worked to help get the hospital desegregated.
If you could say anything to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Well, only thing. Study harder and to not be concerned about solving the world's problems so much, because I think that power is in controlling the economics, not asking people to open doors for you. You got to force them open, and you got to use it with the power of the purse. Most of the thing I did, I think I did right, okay, because I don't think there's anything wrong with standing up for what's right. As a matter of fact, you know, I got arrested my senior year in law school and went out to this place called the Pines. we had reservations because there were some people from out of town. I guess back in our mind, we did want to have a test case. But before the end of the day, they had called the cops and asked us to leave, and we were ultimately arrested. And I had to deal with that. Here I am, a senior in law school. I have to go down. There was a very mean old man that was the secretary of the bar that didn't want blacks to take. We didn't think he wanted us to take the bar or to practice law, especially those radical ones. But anyway, in the middle of our final exams, I had to go down to Raleigh to talk to his group, and one white boy had to go to. His name, he had a car. I was lucky because my car had gotten burned up the year before, so I didn't have a car that year. So his name was Rudy Edwards. Rudy's problem was he was teaching Marxist Leninist seminars as an undergraduate. They thought he was communist or something. So I was able to ride over with him. And then the next time we had an interview was when we were studying for the cram course, trying to pass the bar. We had to go down there again and answer a lot of questions.
I know you've talked about like
Yeah.
the freedom rides and being arrested on the picket line. What other kind of moments or big experiences were you a part of with like civil rights and that kind of
Well, except I guess I had the same experience as anybody else my age, but I did get a chance to go down to Raleigh when the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was organized. Ella Baker had called that there, and I think she was really trying to recruit all of the people that were doing the sit-ins across the South to come under the umbrella of the SCLC, but since the students wanted to do it themselves. I was at the time inclined to go with Dr. King, just didn't know any better, but Ella Baker supported the students doing what she knew that they had the ability to do, and she helped them out in SNCC, and she got fired from SCLC by Dr. King. And I think since she is affiliated with the YWCA, they kind of supported her so that she could go to Atlanta and work with SNCC. But I tell you, one of the most disappointing things I wanted to mention about was, I think I was the hope before I closed my eyes, or anybody that's closed their eyes, that Claudette Colvin, who was the first person to get arrested for not going to the back of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And she was the last one to bring a lawsuit that actually desegregated the buses in Alabama. I want to see her get some kind of award. I was talking about when I got this Unsung Hero Award. I thought that somebody need to award her, but and off the record, I tell you something else about Claudette Colvin too, because she got pregnant, and that was one of the reasons they said that they didn't make her the poster child, but they needed her because they needed somebody who had been discriminated to file a lawsuit against the bus company, and that is what, and Dr. King never mentioned it. Rosa Parks says the name in her book, but she does not say anything very flattering, except she thought that Aurelia Browder, who was the lead plaintiff in the case, and Claudette Colvin kind of resented her getting all that publicity. That's all she said. But she didn't say that they were the ones who filed a lawsuit that the boycott didn't open the bus, the lawsuit did. And it's unfair because deeds don't make history, historians do, and that's a big mistake, and that's why we don't know about her, and we don't know about some other people like Albion Touche, who did so much for civil rights.
And where is he from?
Albion Touche, he's from a Midwesterner. He lived in Greensboro for a while right after during the Reconstruction period, and he also served as a judge during the Republican administration during the Reconstruction time, and for a while he was on the commission that drafted the Constitution for the state of North Carolina and had made sure there has a Bill of Rights that's still in there today. And he also wrote the criminal procedure code that existed until sometime in the mid 60s. And people just don't know about him. That's why I'm trying to tell the people at the Civil Rights Movement about him. But I gave them one of his books, but I don't think it registered. But I'm hoping that one day they'll have an exhibit on him. And then another thing is, back in 46, not 46, it was in the 40s. Well, in 38, I tell you, there was a girl from Durham named Pauli Murray. You ever heard of her? Pauli Murray graduated Hillside, and she tried to get in the University of North Carolina graduate school in 38. And they wouldn't let her in because she was black. So she ended up going to Howard University. And while she was at law school, they started a sit-in. It was a successful sit-in and opened the little restaurant close to the campus. But then they decided they were going to expand it and go downtown. But Mordecai Johnson, who was the president of the school at that time, told them if they continued that stuff, he was going to expel them from school, and they wanted to get out of law school because he was afraid that it might antagonize some of the Southerners who were head of the committees that made the appropriations to Howard, which was a federally funded college at the time. And the sad thing about that is that she was not able to do that. But one day she was coming back to Durham. She was I call her a little orphan Annie because her daddy died and her mama died, and the daddy was in an institution, so she had to be raised by one of her aunts down here in Durham. Her Aunt Pauline, that's who she was named after. So anyway, she was coming home from Durham, and she was arrested in Petersburg for not going to the back of the bus. Put in jail, stayed in jail 3 nights. And that's Pauli Murray. So she was sat in successfully before the people in Greensboro. She was arrested for not going to the back of the bus way before Rosa Parks. She's a North Carolina person too. And then there was another one named James Hoker that tried to get in. Raymond Hoker tried to get in Chapel Hill in I was thinking about around 34. What happened to him? There's a girl named, you need to read her book. Her name is Glenda Gilmore. I got a copy of it called Defying Dixie. He was trying to get into the School of Pharmacy, which is an undergraduate program. But anyway, they told him he had finished Central. They told him he had to get his transcript, but the president of that would not release his transcript. I guess he had a little bit of pressure not to release that transcript, so they use that. They say, you can't get over here because you can't provide us a transcript. He said, I don't need a transcript. I'm going to an undergraduate program. But if they litigated, but ultimately he didn't just get a chance to go. They didn't litigate the one about Pauli Murray. I'll tell you about that one later.
With you being in the center of so much history, both here in Greensboro and during the Civil Rights time period, and towards the back end of Reconstruction, do you remember the very first lunch counter you sat at after it had been desegregated?
Yes, it was Harris down there at Chapel Hill on Franklin Boulevard. But you know, there's a guy named Norman Smith who was later civil liberties lawyers. He's headed as lead lawyer for the North Carolina Civil Liberties Union. He was a student down there, very progressive. He went to Yale Law School. I think he had to do a little time in the military too. But anyway, he took me over there with him, and there were about 3 people going. They said, well, if he doesn't serve you, we still going to eat. But anyway, but I went with them, and they did serve me at Harris. It was a quiet thing, Harry didn't care. I had another roommate, a guy named Thal Elliott. There was a lady, a Gertrude and Scholar. He went to the little dairy bar right there on the corner near the post office, and he was kind of a tan complexion and had a little wavy like hair. They asked him, "Are you an American?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, we can't serve you then." He looked kind of like an Arab, you know, but anyway.
Did the food taste any better?
Well, I didn't taste food. I was kind of a little bit, I bought something that I really probably didn't like and couldn't eat because I was so sure they were going to tell me no. And I was getting adjusted to a new situation. But some of those things changed before I left. We could eat at Harris and we could eat at the Rathskeller, okay? But we couldn't go to the theater until the semester after I left. I think a lady named Evangeline Darity, whose husband was the first black to get a PhD down, his name was Van Darity. And I think his name was, what was Darity's name? Anyway, they served her, but and I guess after that they started letting everybody come. We did pick it, and I think one of the angriest I was when we were out there picking line and the doggone quarterback on the football team crossed my picket line. I was really angry. I could have torn him to shreds. I thought it would be. He was a Rhodes Scholar too. Rhodes Scholar. Not a Rhodes Scholar, but a Morehead Scholar. Morehead. Yeah.
With kind of on the theme of remembrance, the very first movie that you got to see, once y'all didn't have to be in the balconies anymore, where you got to sit with everyone else. Do you remember what?
I don't even remember because I didn't go to movies for years, and I very, very seldom go now. I just got out of, rather than sit in the balcony, I just got used to not going to movies, so I just don't remember the first movie. I saw one movie this past year, don't even remember what that was. But I've been to one movie since they changed the format and have these big mega movie theaters. I've only been one time.
And I guess going forward, we already said, what you would tell yourself knowing what you know now. What would you tell our generation and the future generation to come? What advice would you give them, and where would you like to see them end up?
Well, I would like to see more blacks in the big businesses, and what you got to do is we need to be in trades, and we need to be in businesses, and you have to put the financial consideration first, not your personal financial consideration, but billions of black economic infrastructure like Garvey was talking about, and like Du Bois finally ended up realizing. Okay, and I'm disappointed that that has not been done by the Nation of Islam. I know they had a venture, they had a restaurant, but we need something different from the restaurant. Maybe at some hotels and stuff like that, but some businesses that employ some people and they can generate some income. You look at Bennett colleges having problems with finances because there's no blacks to give them money. I see where a white man donated $30 million to a charity over in High Point. We don't have people that can do that. We need to have people that can and will. I used to see young people that, what do you want to be when you finish when you, as a career, I want to be a philanthropist. You can't be a philanthropist with no money. Okay. But that's what we need, though.
Is that kind of what drove you to become a lawyer?
No. What drove me to become a lawyer was people like Dr. Edmonds and to open some doors. I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer, and I didn't do a lot of civil rights law because when I got out of law school and got a job, they needed me to do some other things, and so I did those other things. And those lawyers that had been out there a while, they were the ones that went to the Arley Conference up in Virginia, where they gave you a kind of continuing education in how to practice civil rights law. But we needed somebody to do the run-of-the-mill stuff, and so I didn't mind doing that. But that's my idea of going to law school was because of civil rights. That's probably why I went into that area and got into political science and stuff like that. I thought that would help. I don't recommend anybody majoring in political science to do anything. I don't see how you can get a job doing it, you know.
Have you had any big cases that have dealt with civil rights? Like I know.
No, I don't know. Not. I didn't get a chance to do that, you know. I left that up to one of my schoolmates, Julius Chambers. I want to say one thing about him, though. You know, my junior year, after my junior year in law school, I worked in Nashville, Tennessee, and we did one of the things we did was a little study, and I did the study because I was I had some experience doing that. And we were trying to ask black people what they wanted to see in the next few years, and they said we want better jobs and higher pay. But the main thing Chambers did, he did the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board case, but his big thing was he did the Law Tobacco case and the Albemarle paper case. Those were lawsuits that gave people a chance to get promotions on their jobs and make equal pay with white folks. That's what black people wanted. And I can see that this community did change so much. A lot of people that I went to elementary school with, they came from low-income places with some of them real small, maybe shotgun houses, but all of them bought homes, and most of them were at large, and some of them even bought Cadillacs, you know. But what Chambers did, people don't underestimate what Julius Chambers has done. I put him up there with Constance Baker Motley and Thurgood Marshall in terms of the doors they opened, and he opened the door so people could make some money.
Do you mind explaining to everyone or describing what a shotgun house looked like?
Well, it's just one of those. They say that it says a 3-room house. One, you go in the house and you can, if you open the door, the front door, you can shoot a rifle from the front of the house right through the back of the house. But these people, most of these people that went to law, it changed. And what Chambers did, it really changed the landscape in Greensboro because where I live used to be a lot of white folks lived there, and they started doing something called blockbusting. One guy would get a white person to sell him the house, and then he would sell it to a black person, and then all the other white people would move out. But a lot of the people were people that bought those houses for a song that white people moved out of because they didn't want to live next to a black person.
How much time do we have left?
22 minutes.
Okay, I just have one final question.
Go ahead.
You kept talking about Dr. King. Have you ever met him, or that's just kind of from a distance?
I don't really remember. I probably did because he came through here a couple of times, and maybe I never met him in person. I didn't meet Marcus Garvey either. Dr. King was a good person, but Dr. King, allowed himself to get detracted and involved in the Vietnamese War. But you know, Thurgood Marshall said that the best president we had was Lyndon Johnson. He was one of the best we had because Lyndon Johnson appointed Thurgood to the Supreme Court. He signed both civil rights bills. He knew he was going to lose the South, but he did it anyway. One of the other better presidents we had was Harry Truman. He desegregated the military. There's another guy that was blinded. He just got out of the military. He was discharged in 1946. He was going to Greensboro, South Carolina, and I got in a dispute with a bus driver, and the cop arrested him and blinded and put both of his eyes out. And they say they think this is why Truman decided to desegregate the military. That was monumental because now we can have blacks that can rise up to ranks. That was monumental. And then a lot of people don't understand also Eisenhower. Eisenhower was put a guy named Earl Warren on the Supreme Court. Earl Warren was the one who authored this decision, Brown against Board. And then Eisenhower sent people down south to enforce those degrees when Constable Baker Motley opened up those schools in the South. He sent the federal troops down there to enforce those decrees. People don't know about Eisenhower. But what they should know about is Clinton. Clinton was the one that when they tried to get him to see if he could modify the law that punished people who use crack cocaine 10 times greater than people who use powder cocaine. And he wouldn't do it. I put him at the bottom. He did nothing but run around with Vernon Jordan. That's all he did. Nothing. But Eisenhower, and as a matter, actually, Nixon did more than Clinton. He had 221 and D3 and 235 housing program that provided jobs and housing for a lot of low-income people. Actually, I think that there was some modification of the I think it was the criminal justice system under Trump. He did some things that Clinton wouldn't do. Now I made my speech.
Well, we want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for okay, yeah.
And we appreciate all the information.
Okay, thank you.
Given us,
I'll tell you something else I was going to tell you. There's a book I want you to see. Okay. Have you read Claudette Colvin's book? Well, anyway, she has a book, and she said that the father of her child, well, they thought the father of the child was white. But anyway, that was one of the reasons they didn't use her as the poster child for the civil rights movement. But the man looked like he was white. But I tell you, if you get this book right here and read this book called Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks and see how her husband is described.
Will you put that up to the camera so we can see the cover of it?
Oh, I didn't want this on the.
Oh, we're gonna cut that out. That's for me to remember it. So you say you thought the father was white.
Yeah. Read this book and see what Rosa Parks' husband looked like.
Leads me to a question.
You want to turn the camera off?
Yeah, we can.
So you can press the record button again. It should stop.